We begin our prayer with the words Allahu Akbar, Allah is the greatest. And this is distinct from Al-Kabir, because Al-Kabir is a greatness that can be described in and of itself. But Akbar requires a comparison. It is greater or greatest, greater than something else, or greatest as compared to something else. Now, this carries great practical significance when we observe our prayers, and why we observe this repeatedly. We say these words repeatedly throughout our prayers. Hazrat Muslim Maud anhu said that when Allahu Akbar is called, then the worshipper is warned that stand with full attention, because the one in whose presence you are standing is the greatest. This is from remembrance of Allah. Now, when we're standing before Allah Almighty and we've presented ourselves in prayer to Him, then when our mind becomes distracted by something else, it means that that distraction, what our mind is going towards, is more beautiful than the beauty of Allah Almighty, in that moment at least. Of course, in our concept, we understand that Allah Ta'ala is greatest, but practically in that moment, that other thing is actually greater than Allah Almighty. That thing is more praiseworthy than Allah Almighty, more worthy of drawing our attention towards itself. So when we think about anything during our ordinary day, then that doesn't mean that it's greater than Allah Almighty, but during Salat, when we've made the intention and when we are supposed to be standing before Allah Almighty to think of something else, then definitely in that moment, that other object or that other person is greater than Allah Almighty. So the words of Allahu Akbar remind us as a way of comparison that that thing which your mind keeps getting distracted to, or that thing which your mind is being pulled to, Allah Almighty is Akbar, He is greater than that in comparison to that. And Allah Almighty is greatest in comparison to all things. So to understand that Allah Almighty is the greatest in concept is something that is separate. It's something that we understand and we know and we accept it after reflection on the perfection of Allah Almighty. But to apply this in practical reality, that's a whole different story. So in prayer, which is all practical reality, the observance of the 5 daily prayers, to come to a point of Allahu Akbar, that yes, Allah is the greatest. He is the most worthy of drawing my attention with His beauty and praiseworthy qualities. That is a journey, and Allahu Akbar reminds us repeatedly of that. Now, another beauty of Allahu Akbar, and saying this at the changing of postures, is that each time we can renew our resolve to concentrate on prayer. When someone is having a weakness and difficulty in concentrating on prayer, then when we start with one resolve, then we may weaken during the course of our prayer. So there, Hazrat Muslim Maud anhu advised that we should make a new resolve at the beginning of each posture. We should break the prayer into different segments. For example, we start Qiyam, and then we say that up until the end of Qiyam, I'm not going to be distracted. Then when we go into Ruku, then we say that, okay, up until Ruku, I make a new resolve, I'm not going to be distracted, and so on and so forth. Now, each time we change postures, we say Allahu Akbar. We think about the last posture, that while I was in Qiyam, then what distracted me away from Allah Almighty? We remind ourselves that Allahu Akbar, Allah is greater than that thing. Allah has more beauty. Allah is more praiseworthy. Then when we go into the next posture and say Allahu Akbar, we renew our resolve that I will only reflect on the beauty of Allah Almighty and I won't allow anything to distract me from the beauty of Allah Almighty. So there also we remind ourselves that Allah Almighty is greater than any other distraction, than anything else that seems great in our minds. So this point of Allahu Akbar and the emphasis in the word of Akbar on comparison is a great practical benefit for us when we are observing the 5 daily prayers. And when we renew our resolve again and again within the prayers, it is to remind us that it is Allah Almighty, in fact, who is greater than every other thing in this world.